Delyn oversees coaching and support raising for Chi Alpha Campus Ministries, which is the campus ministry wing of the Assemblies of God. And so Delyn has a big job. She works in the national office and really oversees quite a number of missionaries, somewhere around 1,500. Do I have that number right?
Yeah, and growing. We have
And growing.
about 200 coming in this year, brand new missionaries. So we're close to 1,700 right now.
Yeah. Okay. Fill us in on the rest of your story. I know that you've got a lot to share, but you came up as really in a more of a supportive role and then really moved into this director position. So, yeah, tell us just a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, my husband Curtis and I came into Chi Alpha in the late 80s. So we were church pastors and youth pastors, and someone invited us to start doing an outreach to the local campus at the University of Oregon. So that was my alma mater, and I am a big Oregon Duck fan, so go Ducks. That we were there for just a couple years and then moved to pioneer a new ministry in Montana called the University of Montana Western. Really fun little campus. And we just worked on that campus together and saw God do some amazing things. But eventually moved to what in Chi Alpha we say district directorship, and then also then an area director. And then in 2008, we were asked to come to the national office. And at that time, it was really Curtis that was asked to come to the national office, which is what you were referring to in regards to being a supportive role. So I came with him and just started volunteering. And then when you volunteer, lots of stuff gets handed to you that's in a variety of different helping other parts of the ministry. So yeah, eventually I found myself doing some support raising coaching and found myself absolutely loving that. And that's been about the last 4 years. And then just last December was asked to jump in to the director's position, helping all of these missionaries get fully funded.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And Dylan, your family you are a ministry family. It's not just your
It's
husband who then had you come support. It's you, your husband, and your two sons are both in ministry as well. And all of you at one point, I don't know if your kiddos were quite there yet, but you guys all have had to raise support at some point.
Yeah, they are. Both my boys are currently missionaries with Chi Alpha, and they raise their own budgets. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Actually it's a good part of the story we'll probably get into today. But when we stick with friends and family, the three of us, the three budgets that are being raised out of my family, we know the same people. We're the same family. We have the same friends. My friends are actually in ministry. So if my children ask for support from my friends, they're asking other missionaries. The whole idea of who do you ask has been a big question in our family.
Tell me why you had a little bit of a flip in your perspective on support raising not that long ago, but why are you so passionate about helping missionaries get fully funded and helping them actually get a full budget?
There are a lot of reasons. And I think one of the biggest reasons is I think when God calls us, then we have to say yes to that calling. Yes, that this is the direction we need to go. But then for me personally, what happened is since I was more in a supportive role, I allowed my husband to do all the support raising. But when I became a support raising coach, which is hilarious because I had done very little personal support raising at that time. I had done some, but not a whole lot. But when I started coaching people, I found that one of the biggest things that they faced was just the mental block that they were worthy of their wage. And I would say to them, I'd quote to them the scripture, you're worth it. You are worth the work. The work you do is worth the budget you have. It's not even potentially more. But also you're worth it because God's called you to do the job. And as I found myself saying that to others, I recognized it within myself that I don't know that I valued or that I believed in myself that I was worth it. And I think that's what has driven me now. I'm tired of a little bit of that scarcity mindset that I know I have had, very recent, and also that I've watched other missionaries have. And I want missionaries to stay in the mission field for the long haul, for the full call that God has them, and not just cut that short because of funding. And in the midst of it, I want missionaries' children to have fun along the way. I want them to have shoes on their feet. And I think that getting people out of that mindset of, one, not being worth the wage, and two, getting out of that scarcity mindset, I think is a big passion for me.
Yeah, for sure. And you have an interesting role too, because you're coming in, a lot of times you're meeting people right out of college. So here they might have had a job in high school, maybe a smaller job too in college, but nothing that was, now they're college educated. All of your people are college educated. And so they're coming out of this season, and now all of a sudden they're like having to go raise personal support with a college education. And I just find that you have the ability to meet them really early on to hit that poverty mindset before it takes root, and but also to really inspire them to do this as a career. And I don't know if you see some of those guys when they come out and they're just like super frustrated, overwhelmed with the support raising process, but what advice do you give to them when they're first getting started and they're first getting into the support raising process?
I think one of the things that really is important is just the biblical theology of support raising. This is not a man-made decision. This is really the way God intended for support raising to happen. And I think when missionaries understand that this is the way God intended it to be. Jesus lived on support. He didn't have a job. When people really understand that, that is a huge aspect of it. And honestly, I think another aspect of it that I think once they recognize that we are just providing an opportunity for others to give, there's something about that empowers other people. And sometimes I call it the sleeping giant in the pew. That's the goal of support raising, is to awaken the sleeping giant in the pew, the person that's just sitting in the church pew and they're not really engaging in mission in their own life. And this is an opportunity for them to engage in and really partner with something that's way bigger than just themselves, and actually way bigger than just the missionary too,
For sure.
the work of God.
I can't reiterate this more, emphasize this more, is that there are so many entrepreneurs, business leaders, really sharp individuals who are sitting in the pews of our churches or listening online, whatever is happening right now, but they are just not getting engaged the way that we would hope that all, faith-based people would, all Christians would be engaged. And so here as missionaries, I just love that it's like you have this opportunity to really invite them into something that's bigger than just the local community and something so much greater than that. So I love that. So, what steps can somebody take to turn things around and regain the confidence that it's possible to get fully funded? If they've really come to this position where they're just frustrated and down, what do you see that works that allows them to turn things around and get the confidence back?
I think a lot of it is in our minds. And I think sometimes as missionaries and support raisers, we defeat ourselves before we ever get started. I'm in a support raising season currently. I know every morning I have to make a shift in my mindset.
Yeah.
It's not, it's this whole idea. Again, I said it earlier about just providing people opportunity. That's the mindset shift that I have to make. And so one of the things I think that we can do with that is to be rubbing shoulders with community, those that are support raising with us. And I think jumping in on a community that's doing support raising, that's a huge piece where we're sharing ideas. We're talking about things that only support raisers typically talk about, and the discouragements, the ability to overcome a no, the ability to overcome a fear. A lot of times the ability to overcome picking up the telephone and making an appointment. And those are big things that when we're walking with each other in a community setting is powerful. I just don't think we're ever designed to do things alone in general when it comes to mission. And support raising oftentimes is one that we do alone. We do everything else together, but then we do the support raising thing alone. So community is a big thing. I think getting a coach is a big thing. If you really want to, this is so funny because even recently, I've been trying to do it alone myself, not necessarily out of a community, but more just without a coach. And I had someone come to me and say, why do you feel like you can be a coach for others, but you don't need one? And it was like, I didn't even recognize I wasn't getting coaching myself. And so I've called a friend and I said, hey, will you keep me working this thing every week? Can we get together every week? And then I called another friend and I said, I need some prayer support. I need someone I can call you every week and you will pray for me. So just about a month ago, I asked 3 friends to pray with me on a weekly basis. And so we get together and they pray for me. I think those have been 2 big things to help me overcome my mindset. That's the biggest thing for me. Then there's the things that we've learned to do, the skills we've learned in FFA to do. Then we have to actually do those, right? That's the next piece, is then help those people are helping me actually make out action steps. What is it this week I'm going to do? I think when I look at the checklist FFA puts out, I think it's 52 steps. I might be wrong, but it's 52. Yeah, 52 steps. When I look at it, sometimes that can be overwhelming. Which one do I do next? And I know they're like in order. But for me, it still feels, wow, 52 steps. That's a big process. But when I sit down with my coach, okay, what are the next steps that you need to do now? And some of the steps in the checklist, some of those steps you can't do in an afternoon.
It's a long time.
You're working on it, but you can be doing other things while this is still taking form. So that's helping me, having a coach helping me walk through those things.
Good.
And the accountability. Sorry, I got to get that.
That's good. That's good.
When we're not accountable, it's just we're only accountable to ourselves. But the work of the ministry sometimes overrides the actual support raising. Again, it's an ongoing tension currently in my own life, even.
Yeah, I love it. I was just going to ask you, because you teach, you not only coach yourself, but you also teach people how to become coaches. And I think that sometimes people get a little bit confused about what coaching actually is. And so I was just going to ask you, since you are like, this is your thing, would you mind just sharing just briefly? Because I know like people are like, oh, I've got a prayer partner, a mentor, or a spiritual leader, or whatever. There's just all sorts of things that people can do for us. But when it comes to coaching, what is it about coaching that really is so different than all the rest of them?
Yeah, for me, the way that I address coaching is that coaching is different than mentoring and consulting, because it depends on where the expertise lies. And when I'm in a coaching relationship, I am recognizing the person I'm coaching is the expert in their own life. They're the expert in their own situation. My job as a coach is to help draw out of them what they're already an expert in. Now, that does not mean that they know everything about the skills that are needed to actually do support raising. I'm not saying that they have the skills already in them, but they know how to take the skills that they're learning in the training and apply those into their situation. And I think that's just a big part. I think FFA teaches amazing skills, and we just have to figure out then how to make that work in our culture and in our environment.
For sure. And I sat through a coaching training with you, which I really appreciated that, because I was able to really understand that I tend to ask a lot of questions in whatever the environment that we're in, but I'm usually asking questions so that I can give advice and really consult and say, okay, do A, B, C, D, and go tackle this. But I think that what you're saying here is so good, because we all have relationships with people where we're the experts in those relationships. So you just need somebody to really pull out in you whether or not that's the right person to reach out to, or whether the timing is right, or whether the accountability of, are you actually doing this? So all of that you just shared was so good, because the coach is not there to do ABC, go do this stuff and give you all these assignments. It's more of a, okay, what do you need to do to move things forward, and how can you improve relationships so that you can become the expert in your space?
And I think in light of that, in regards to just getting known, sometimes that's what a missionary's hardest part is. How do I get known by someone other than my friends and family? But then the question comes, once I get known, when is the right time to ask them? I'm never going to know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But I think the person that is actually doing the work, if they can get their mindset correctly, because we could talk ourselves out of it. So I've met the person once. I've met the person twice. I've only met them 5 times. I've known them 3 weeks. I've known them 6 years. When's the right time to connect with them and actually ask them for support? I'm never going to know that answer. Now, I might have I might have some thoughts on it that I am willing to offer if it's needed for the situation. But a coaching relationship is really helping the person that's actually doing the asking overcome their maybe negative mindset and recognize when is the right time to ask. Because they're the ones in the conversations. They're the ones that know where the relationship is. Yeah.
There is a lot of strategic thinking when it comes to support raising. And I think that's where sometimes people are like, oh, I just want to do this A, B, C, D, and I just want to knock the, and it's like relationships don't work that way. And so it's, and God doesn't work that way. So it's off. I always tell people, I'm like, you got to follow the Holy Spirit on this one. If you feel prompted to not call somebody, I'm not going to be on your case that, oh, I can't believe you're being so lazy to not call it. I'm like, sometimes some of this is just
It's so
timing
true.
and the people. So I love that in coaching, it's really about pulling that expertise out of the person themselves. And I think that's just something that a lot of missionaries forget. And it's back to some of the lies that we just it perpetuate over decades and
Yes.
centuries about the fact that it's your servants. You're serving everybody else. But I'm like, you're an expert. Like when I think about your people, Delyn, like those 1,500 missionaries, I'm like, nobody knows college students better than your people. Every single day they're on that university campus hearing about what their trials are. They dealing with anxiety, depression, suicide,
Mhm.
relationships. And then you got all the international students coming over and their challenges. So I'm like, those guys, I'm like, I just have to, like, I'm just going to take 2 seconds and just say, you guys are like every single person who's watching this, you are an expert in your space. Like all those people that you serve, you know them better. The university student, the university missionary better than anyone.
Mhm.
So, you know their challenges, their frustrations. I love
Mhm.
that. But as you work with so many missionaries in this space, what are you seeing that just you're like, if you could tell them just knock it off, what are they doing that's just not effective? That just seems to keep perpetuating in this space. What do you see that is happening?
I think the biggest thing is the inability to make an ask. They don't ask. They throw out assumptions. Hey, if you're interested, like on social media, hey, if you're interested, will you support me? They'll get into a really important meeting. They've been building relationship. The person likes them. They're trusting them. They believe in them. They've maybe even given to them in the past. But our missionaries are looking for monthly gifts and they're not willing to make the ask. I think that is the biggest thing that I actually have to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so true. And I think that's comes back to asking somebody for something that you think that they don't want to give to you. So if you think that
Yes.
you're like, "Oh, I'm asking for money," and they don't want to give that money away, then yeah, you feel like it's super awkward and then you're like, "What am I going to this feels uncomfortable to ask them for cash when all that stuff." And so,
I've got to tell you a story,
yes, tell
like
me a
in
story.
this one.
Yes.
So Curtis and I have a friend of ours that gives to us, and her husband is not on board with her giving to us, but she really wants to give to us. He's a little bit controlling in regards to the finances, so he gives her a very specific amount of money for groceries. She does everything she can do to save money, cutting coupons, driving multiple places, grocery stores, finding things the cheapest because the budget, he doesn't ask for, did you spend the budget? That's what she gets for the month. She gives everything that she saves at the end of the month to Curtis and I.
Oh, what?
That right there is actually the way that people are out there. They want to give to mission. They want to give to the work of effective ministries. And boy, her sacrifice, she spends hours, cutting those coupons and doing all that she has to do to make it so she can give more pennies. It's really very seldom is it over $30, but she is sacrificially giving of her time so she can do it.
And it's so hard when you see somebody like that sacrificing so much and then think somebody who has a lot of has the means to give a lot. Like, why wouldn't they want to give that cool? Why wouldn't they give above and beyond for the mission as well? So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I feel bad for her relationship with her husband though. Because imagine if he would just catch wind. So I'm gonna join you in prayer for that.
Thank you.
Because he needs to catch wind on how amazing you guys are. Because I think that there's more money in that budget for you.
Let me tell you one more story that's maybe not so sad.
Yes.
Well, I had a gal connect with me, and she had been in a church service where the pastor was asking for money for a building campaign they were doing. And she said, so her and her husband were sitting there in the service asking the Lord, what is it that you want us to give toward the campaign? And she said, the figure didn't come for them, a figure came for me.
Oh,
So she called me and wanted me to come over. And she said, I feel like that we were supposed to give this money to you. And she is literally in tears. She is crying, hardly able to communicate what the Lord had spoken to her in order to give to me. And those are pretty humbling moments as a missionary, but they're also, I think, a better representation of the fact that people actually do want to give.
yeah. And just the heart of God's people, that he owns it all. That's what it's just a reminder that he can wake somebody up. He can prompt them in any circumstance.
So true. Oh my God. He's a story too.
Keep going. Go for it.
Okay, so my husband and I also connect with international students just because we believe they add a lot to our life.
By the way, hospitality is like Delyn's sweet spot. Like coaching and support raising, yes. Hospitality. Oh,
Yes, it's
hands
so
down.
fun. I had asked the little international student that my husband and I have been hanging out with a little bit. He's from Pakistan. I asked him if he had ever had a dream in English. And he said, no, I've never had a dream in English, only Pakistani, only Urdu, only Urdu. And I said, okay, that's so fun. But next time you have a dream, the first time you have a dream, I want to hear about it. So he calls me about a week later and he said, Delyn, I have got to talk to you. And I said, well, talk to my husband. We'll work out a time. He said, oh, no, only you. I must talk to only you. So we meet at a coffee shop. I'm having coffee. And he said, Delyn, I had my very first dream in English. And I said, you did? What was it about? He said, we were in this dream. We were talking. You were telling me about being hospitable. He said in his dream, I had invited him to live with us, which is a whole nother story. But so that in his dream, he said, but in the dream, all I could be thinking about was this word donorship. He said, this is a new word to me. I don't know donorship. What is donorship? And I said, he shared a little bit more about the dream. And I said, what do you think the word donorship was? And he said, I think God was telling me I was supposed to give you money. And I thought, isn't that amazing that God's going to actually give a dream to a young Pakistani man that doesn't know the word? He doesn't know the word missionary. He doesn't know the word donorship, but the Lord actually drops that into his mind. And we talked through what my job is, how I get paid to do my job. He asked me, how would a person give to me? I told him the details and he dropped some money into my account, which again was incredibly humbling because that's the truth out there. Those are the people. God is opening the doors for people. And sometimes it's just getting the word out of what we're doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How incredible. And that's case in point. You don't even have to speak English, don't have to dream in English. God can speak to somebody. That is so incredible. And a student, it doesn't matter how old. And I know that for anybody who has raised personal support, they know one of the guys that's in Fully Funded, they had a 8-year-old cousin who started giving to them, traveling, being missionaries overseas. And it was like, I love those stories of these young people, but I also understand that it's like, those are small donations that do add up, but I am always like, have that big faith that
Yes.
that those big donations are sitting out there just like the husband and wife that were praying for this building and dropped money in your account. I assume that it was a fairly significant amount, that it was like not just a few extra cents on the dollar that
Yeah, it
somebody
was.
collected after couponing. But how cool. 3 very incredible stories about that. And as people are doing this work, I just want to ask, what are you seeing that is working so well? So being afraid of making the ask, absolute, like we got to get over that part of it and really boldly speak about the work that's being done. But what do you think is actually working for these missionaries as they're tackling their support raising efforts?
Yeah, I think actually getting appointments, just like making a phone call, that's working. Once the relationship has been built, literally picking up the phone. You've got to pick up the phone. You've got to get the appointment or have someone else pick the phone up for you and schedule appointments for you. I think that's been a big part of it. I had a missionary recently that I was working with, basically about $250 from his goal. It's a Tuesday. He calls me. Do you think I can squeeze in? Because in our culture, you're not on doing your work. You're not on campus unless you're fully funded. I said, I think we can squeeze you in, but you're going to have to get approval from this other guy in our organization. He calls the other guy. He says, no way, no way. No way are we going to let you on until you get fully funded. We want you to be a healthy missionary. He called me, he said, what am I going to do? And I said, do you remember when a few months ago we talked about getting a team of people together that would help you raise your support? And he said, yeah, I remember. Remember, you talked to them, but you didn't really ever walk through that. You need to get that team back together. He called one team member specifically and just said, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm going to have to pick up another $250 by Thursday in basically 2 days. Can you help me? That individual picked up the phone and made some contacts, and that missionary was in the pulpit actually Thursday night with a full budget because someone else got on his team and helped him raise his support. So I think that's a big thing, a big part of it. Engaging other people, like I was saying earlier about waking the sleeping giant in the pew. Sometimes that person is actually going to be the donor. Sometimes that person's the donor and a networking person. Someone's going to help you get connected with some people that you don't know. And I think those are 2 very big parts of getting people unstuck.
I am so glad you said that because that is my favorite thing to teach on inside of the academy. Because back to just the not doing it alone. It is so overwhelming and daunting when you're like, oh my gosh, nobody cares about my $250 that I have to raise. But people do care. You just haven't asked for their help. You haven't asked for their advice. And case in point, what you just said, it's pick up the phone, reach out, ask for help. People don't want to see you fail. Nobody wants to see a missionary fail. Like that's sad to think that here's somebody who is called to the mission field and can't get there because of money. Like the least exciting thing about any of us is money. And I'm like, money is going to be the reason that you don't get to do the work that you're called to do. So thank you, yeah, for sharing that. And
Let me tell you one other. I don't know where we are
yeah, we're
in
good.
kind of in our thinking, but I called someone right when the COVID season hit, and I asked him, what would you tell missionaries? He's a business person. And I said, what would you tell missionaries right now? Because I've got to be telling them, but I don't know what to tell them. So what would you tell them? And he gave me some really great advice, and we had a really great conversation. And when right at the end of the conversation, I said, now I'm going to tell the missionaries everything that you've told me. And he was so kind because then he said to me, why don't you tell me the name of the last 5 people that you have talked to that have had this question? Can you raise money in a COVID season? And I gave him those names and account numbers, and he dropped money in each of their accounts too. And I said to him, now I'm not giving you my account number. And he said, I know. And I said, but I will be maybe connecting with you in a couple months. And we had another advice giving conversation. And then a couple months later, he did pick me up for a monthly and yearly gift. And I'm just so grateful for that, because I do think when you ask it for advice, like you have taught, when you ask for advice, oftentimes money comes. Sometimes it's for you, but sometimes it's for the others in your influence.
But what you did that was so great in that conversation was that I'm not going to send you my information, but I definitely want to have a conversation with you as well. And so it was reminding them that you are also one of them and that you also have that support to raise. So just dropping that little nugget, how beautiful.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
a pro. I love that. We do have to wrap up our conversation, but I really want, if people are listening into this conversation and they're like, hey, I'd love to connect with Delyn. I'd love to hear more. Maybe you're a part of another sending organization. Maybe you're in a position like Delyn is, and it would be good for you guys to just have each other and to be connected in that way. Or you're a member of Chi Alpha and you're like, man, I should contact Delyn. She should be on my radar and make sure that you have a coach, that you have the resources you need. Delyn, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Right now, the best way is just going to be through email. And my email address is delyncole@gmail.com.
Yep. And Delyn is Delyn,
Mm.
DelyncCole @gmail.com. Okay, cool.
Right.
Awesome. Delyn, before we wrap, any last advice that you'd give to someone who's out there, maybe just in a position of, hey, I got to finish this off. Maybe they're at the $250 mark. They're closing in on the rest of their support. What advice would you give them to keep pressing on?
Oh, I think the biggest advice is just to continue to do what you know to do. Don't try to change your direction. Don't think there's another thing out there. Just what you've been taught, especially through FFA, it's a great direction to go, and it's just doing the next step and making it happen and doing a little bit every day.
Awesome. Thank you. I know it's just do something, right?
It is. Sometimes I think we wake up in the morning and we know we have money that we need to raise, and it defeats us already. And sometimes it's just taking the one small step towards the goal that is really the answer. But that's again where coaching really comes in, because sometimes you don't know what the next little step is. And having someone walking alongside you and a team of people, like a community, it's just really important.
Yeah, for sure. There's something about having somebody else say, you can do it.
So true.
Even if it's, I don't believe it, but they believe in me. And so let's just go do it and see what happens. And I know, Delyn, you do that for so many people. And I believe just like discipleship, where we're leading people to the Lord and you're telling people about Jesus, I feel like the same kind of discipleship has to happen in the support raising process. Many people just don't even know that our missionaries are raising support or that this is how this is happening. So sometimes it's just an education where you're just telling people, like just how you did, Delyn, with the young man from Pakistan who's, I don't know what this means, but tell me what it is. And it's just educating them, and you never know what'll happen from there. On that note, thank you so much for
Oh, thank
taking
you.
the
A
time to
privilege.
share your valuable information. If you guys can't tell, Delyn is super passionate about coaching and just making sure that you're not doing it by yourself. So thank you. I appreciate you. Delyn is a
Thank
dear
you.
friend of mine and will be for the rest of my life.
That's true. That's true. Thanks, Mary.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.